PTQ Dragon's Mage in Liverpool. Round 6, game 2. John Hibbert is 1-0 up against Lee Houldsworth. Let's talk a little bit about the sideboarding that both Kiki-Pod and Blue White Angels is going to do here.
I think that Lee's probably going to bring in a couple of dispels against John's counterspells, and he may bring in cards like Avalanche Riders and potentially Sowing Salt if he wants to go after John's mana base. John is bringing in quite a few cards, I believe. He has access to 3 Stony Silence in his boat, which will shut off Lee's pod. He also has 3 Vendilion Clicks, which are always good against sort of combo-y type decks. And he also has access to 2 Aven Mind Sensor, again a really good card against pod. He also does have access to 4 Meddling Mage, but I can see him bringing those in maybe on the play rather than on the draw. And Lee's resolved a pod really early here. And that's usually a sign that the pod deck's going to make life very difficult here. It's extremely hard for a control deck to beat a resolved pod.
Well, like you said, that's why we have Stony Silence.
Yeah, it is why Stony Silence in, but John obviously doesn't have it. Otherwise, it would have been on the table pretty quickly that turn. So Lee's going to get at least 1 or 2 activations out of his pod.
So what does John have that can possibly disrupt Lee at this point then?
Aven Mind Sense is pretty much his only hope at this point. The other hope, of course, is that Lee's just got nothing in his hand and can't do anything with his pod. But considering Lee's deck is pretty much all creatures, I think that that's asking for quite a lot. Lee's having a bit of a think about what he wants to do this turn.
I think he should be looking at dropping a 3-drop, and if that gets mana leaked, then podding away his Noble Hierarch to start getting the chain going.
Well, he's podding away the Hierarch anyway, it looks like here. Probably getting Wall of Roots.
But he is paying the 2 life by the look of things.
Yep.
So he obviously wants to do something with the rest of his mana.
More than likely podding to Wall of Roots, and then suppose he could make something like a Restoration Angel to blink his Wall of Roots.
Or a Deceiver Exarch to untap the pod and then use the Wall of Roots.
I mean, a play that we might like here is to tap the... If he's got Deceiver Exarch, wait until John's upkeep and play it on John's upkeep. Looks like that's exactly what he's... Oh no, he played that main phase. He was obviously looking to pod it away during that turn. I think I might have preferred seeing that done in John's upkeep, to tell you the truth, because it means that because Aven Mind Sensor's got flash, it means it gets him an extra turn with his pod at this point.
Well, that is the worry at this point, that if he uses his pod, he's going to see a Aven Mind Sensor in response.
Yeah, so if Lee casts Deceiver Exarch in John's upkeep there, then John can't use Aven Mind Sensor at all.
No, he either has to mana leak.
Yeah,
either way he's going to be tapped out.
Yeah. In comes Kitchen Finks, gaining Lee back some life.
At this point you can't really play around the Mind Sensor, you just have to go for it.
Yeah, I mean John's only boarding in 2, so it's a case of whether he's...
but you'd think John's opening hand would have to have either a Mind Sensor or a Stony Silence for him to keep it.
Yeah, and there in fact is Aven Mind Sensor, so John's got the draw that he needs to stop Lee just completely destroying him with the pod. So it just depends if Lee can get lucky and hit in the top few cards of his deck. It doesn't look like he has, so...
He's just asking how you restart, and obviously anytime you search your deck, you shuffle your library afterwards.
Yep. The effect resolves as normal, you just get to look at the top 4 instead of the entirety of your deck. And really, Lee's got no way to remove that Aven Mind Sensor in his deck. He's got 1 murderous red cap, which can kill it, as long as John doesn't have a Restoration Angel to protect it. And I think that's pretty much it.
So Lee's just looking at raw dogging the combo now.
Yeah, And John's going to Vendilion click him on upkeep here. So this all might come back a little bit to that play when... since Lee couldn't win that turn, I think that it probably would have been a bit more prudent just to buy himself an extra turn away from Aven Mind Sensor by using the Deceiver Exarch on John's upkeep, potentially. In maybe Lee, I mean, with Lee's hand there, that's Dispel, Birthing Pod, Deceiver Exarch. With that hand, he could threaten to kill John the next turn, but John's going to get an untapped phase anyway, so I think he's better off attacking his mana.
And Lee could have given himself another turn then by podding away the Deceiver Exarch into an Avalanche Rider to again keep John off a land.
Yeah, just keep John pinned. Or he could just have podded straight into his Murderous Red Cap, which would have meant that whatever happens, the Mind Sensor's going to die. Because of the way that the triggers go on the stack, the Persist goes above the Birthing Pod. When he tries to pod away the Murderous Red Cap, the Persist goes above it, so it'd kill the Aven Mind Sensor before the pod resolved. Of course, this is everything that you can potentially think about while watching the game from the crow's eye point of view. It's a lot more different when you're actually down there playing in the game.
Well, that's that's what testing is for. This is why we do testing, to come up with situations like this, so you'll know when it actually happens. Of course, in the UK, blue-white is one of the decks you test against because there'll be enough people who, for some reason, turn up with a deck like that.
And recently there's been blue, white, red tempo decks beginning to make splashes on Modo as well, on Magic Online. So you definitely should be testing against that for any future modern PTQs that you come up against. It'll probably have access to Boros Charm as well when Gatecrash comes out as well. So it feels so nice. It's like you just 4 your opponent with it and then Snapcaster it and 4 your opponent. You've got 10 damage right there just off 2 cards. So Boros Charm, I think, is going to make a really big splash in pretty much every format where it's legal. Maybe not Vintage, but I think in pretty much all the other formats where it can potentially be played, it's going to make a big impact.
You can even put it on a stick if you really want to.
If you really want to, yeah. For all you modern legacy players out there, how about Isochron Scepter? So John again at this point. I mean, Lee got fairly lucky there. He found a Restoration Angel with his pod on his Kitchen Finks, but I don't think that's going to be able to save him too much at this point. Nice timing from John. Lee was going to untap his Hallowed Fountain with his Deceiver Exarch, so he could Dispel, but in response, John has Path to Exile his... Yep, look at the top 4, Lee. No looking at your whole deck. Good Path to Exile. Which, although I don't think Lee's playing that many basics, to tell you the truth. 4-colour pod decks tend not to be too jammed up on basics.
And this is really the one thing about Jund, we often come back to talking about this. It's very hard to shut a Jund deck down.
Yeah, it's Chalice won't do it because it's got 1, 2, 3s and 4s that matter. It can just pull your hand to pieces, or it can present a very fast clock.
In previous round, obviously we looked at an Aura's deck, and in this round, with the Kiki-Pod deck, we're seeing people's sideboard cards that are potentially just shutting them off completely, stopping them completely from doing what it is they want to do.
Yeah, it's also one of the reasons why decks like Robots or Affinity, whatever you want to call it, have taken a little bit of a nosedive in popularity. It's just a case of you might be favourite game 1 over whatever you're playing. There's no guarantee you're favourite, but you probably are favourite game 1. But game 2, you've got to fight against such an absolute nightmare of sideboard cards coming in that a lot of players are believing it's not worth it. It's very much like the if you want to go back to Legacy, it's very much like playing Dredge in Legacy. It's favourites against everything game 1, but if anyone is prepared for it, as they should be. I mean, the first thing when you're playing Legacy is when you're looking at your sideboard is 4 Leyline of the Void, or at least something to deal with graveyards. And Dredge decks have to fight through that game 2 and 3, and they've got to win a match where they're probably 20 or 30% favourite after boarding. And Affinity feels very much the same, because in Modern, if you've got sort of red or green in your deck, you think, oh, I'll just put some Ancient Grudges in my board, or if you're greens, I'll have Creeping Corrosion. And Abrupt Decay doesn't help you either, because that deals with your cranial plating, and it just turns into a basically just you're treading through treacle trying to win game 2 and 3, and a lot of the time it's just going to come down to how much your opponent has wrecked you post board.
So Lee's pretty much podded away all of his creatures thanks to the Aven Mind Sensor.
Yep, there's not really a lot Lee can do about that Mind Sensor at this point. Again, he's kind of drawn cards when he doesn't want to.
So this is an easy 2-0 win for John Hibbert.